The ego versus the self, the third dimension versus the fifth dimension. The ego, believed to be who we are, is experienced as separation. God is out there somewhere, a feeling of disconnect with other people. It is the experience of competition, being right, wars, fights, conflicts, confusion. The ego is concerned about what others are thinking and constantly needs to defend itself or manipulate others to agree with it. Why? Because the ego is empty of power and value, and it has to acquire it from outside to inside. It is also called the third dimension. All addictions stem from the inability to feel satisfied. In other words, it's a constant craving for love, attention, approval, appreciation, but never finding it. The energy of the ego is a constant neediness. Even if it gets what it needs, the neediness kicks in again. It's insatiable. The fourth dimension is a bridge. It is used to cross over to the fifth, or the self. For example, principles are a bridge, like hope, faith, kindness, perseverance, inspiration, honesty, openness, willingness, charity. We don't live in the fourth dimension, but we use it as a springboard. The realm of the self, or the true self, is experienced. It's called the fifth dimension, but it's not actually a place. It's more of an experience. And it doesn't lack love, nor is it needy. It is secure, it's confident, and experiences unconditional love. So conditions do not need to change to feel love, unlike the ego, who seeks to change conditions to try to fill that void. We have access to infinite intelligence in the fifth, unlike the third that relies on experts with credentials or information from outside oneself. In the fifth, information or images come from consciousness, and it goes directly into the brain, sometimes through others, but it's synchronistic and not relying on others. It's having direct access to information. The self is effortless and easygoing. The ego is rigid and fixed. The self is open and has no vested interest in controlling others. The ego seeks to dominate and will retaliate with force or violence. The self is joyful. The ego is stressed. The ego forces, the self allows. The ego experiences grief and loss and fears the worst. The self is peaceful and feels well-being. The ego makes others wrong. The self is open to be wrong. The ego feels confusion where the self feels clarity. Right now, the collective is jumping back and forth between the two dimensions, the third and the fifth. From the fifth, we can understand the third, but the third has no awareness of the fifth. The ego thinks the fifth dimension is just fiction, and the self has compassion and understands the ego. From the ego perspective, one actually believes that that's who they are, full of character defects and neediness and shortcomings. The self knows that one is not the ego, but used to believe that too. We as a collective are on the cusp of crossing over to the fifth dimension. In the third, we feel separate. From the fifth, we are like one body. We are a unit. It is an exciting time to be alive as we watch the third dimension fall apart to make way for our true self. The greatest game ever played and the biggest show on earth is happening right now. It's going to be a glorious awakening. Peace to you.